Welcome back to another episode of Force Chatter. We are going to be covering the Book of Boba Fett, episode 3, or chapter 3, I should say, The Streets of Mos Epsa. I'm Eric, and I'm joined tonight by Lou, Tim, and Tom. Tom, how are you doing tonight? Yeah?
I'm doing excellent. Any day we get to talk about new Star Wars.
And sadly, we don't get as many of those as we would like. You know.
This is true. And Ralph McQuarrie is now canon. Well, his work is canon in very nice. Meta. So,
Tim, how are you doing? Yeah. I'm doing okay. Didn't get as much snow as I'd hoped. I don't know what this wee stuff is. Didn't get as much snow as I had hoped tonight, but got a decent amount. Oh yeah, yeah. It seemed to trend more south, but we're getting a little bit of it. And I almost got my Darth Vader Lego helmet done to match my Boba Fett one back here that you can't quite see in the corner because it's green, and I got a green screen because I'm brilliant, of course. That's okay. The Darth Vader one is mostly black, so that'll be better. Lou, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, although my helmets aren't doing as good because my cat took out my Stormtrooper.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I need to do a little repair.
Did you keep the cat?
Well, yeah.
Really?
I mean, I think in universe that would be accurate too. I think a cat
Probably.
could take out a Stormtrooper. So you're living Star Wars,
and it'd have no problem getting through the armor. So.
That's right. Yeah, a little swipe.
Boy, I tell you what, this week's episode, we had a episode where the fans, some of the fans, the internet trolls were a little, and everybody else seemed to like it okay. Then we had a good episode. Then we get this. Easily the most divisive episode so far. Seems to be the most divisive episode, even if you include all the Mandalorian stuff, which is weird to me because I could name it easily 3 or 4 episodes of The Mandalorian that were nowhere near as good as the worst of these 3 episodes so far. I think that this has been a solid series. So we're going to talk a little bit about that this episode. So this is Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Epsa. The duration, not including the end credits, is pretty much exactly 34 minutes, right on the nose. And I got to say, 6.5 minutes of flashbacks. That's it. Not bad. Yeah, Robert Rodriguez, who directed this episode, thank you for listening. We appreciate your patronage of the Force Chatter podcast. Yeah, huh? Really? How much?
Surely they hadn't.
How much production time do you need? You saw the chase scene, right? Because they didn't spend a lot of time on. We'll come back to that.
That's a different topic. Yeah.
Wow, I'm raking those coals, aren't I? Okay. All right, so we're going to go through the episode here real quick and break it down and kind of give our opinions of things, provide a little bit of analysis as well. We start out this episode, 8D8, giving a briefing about the power vacuum. And we get a little bit of a layout of who's running what in Mos Espa. We've got the city center being run by the Trandoshans. For those of you who are not super hardcore fans, that would be like Bosk from episode 5. You've got the, this workers district run by the Aqualish, like Ponda Baba from the Cantina. And then finally, you've got the spaceport and the upper sprawl being run by, who is it? The Klatooinians, excuse me. Which I guess they appeared in Return of the Jedi at Jabba's palace, but there's not really like a notable Klatooinian from the films.
Yeah, they were in not the films, but they were the Raiders in that episode of season 1 of Mando on Sorgan.
Okay, so apparently Tim was not audible. Remember the problems we had before? And I fixed it, and then they went back to the right way again, making the fix not work. It's not.
I was actually.
They were robbed
syncing the whole time.
It's not that I hate Microsoft, but
sure.
I was just saying the right way is for Tim to be muted.
That's true.
Wow.
I mean, if we were to poll the hosts here, I know which ones would vote for that and which ones. Tom would be the nice one. But
yeah,
Yeah,
slip a velvet
that's okay.
dagger.
For those who are listening to the audio podcast, Tim didn't say anything interesting, so it's okay.
Wow. I thought it was actually rather profound, but that's okay.
That's okay. Everybody missed
That's
it.
fine.
Your one moment, Tim, and they missed every word of it.
Yeah, my one moment. Yeah.
That's okay. All right, that's fixed.
Because I'm certain to not say anything else the rest of the episode.
And you know, the funny thing is, I run checks and make sure everything works, and then we're going to have to start doing more extensive sound checks. That's okay. So, moving on. We got a breakdown of how things are split up power-wise in Mos Espa. And then we get a little bit of an example of things happening at street level. We get this guy wander in. He's a watermonger. Lortha Peel. Played by Stephen Root. Did you guys recognize him?
No.
I thought he was going
Right?
to come and look for his
Or he was going to
stapler,
start throwing
to be
wrenches at
honest.
people's heads. So he's, what was the character's name? Milton from Office Space?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And then he was also the
Yes.
coach in Dodgeball.
Well, he wasn't the coach. He was because
Oh,
that
right,
was
right,
Rick
right, right.
Torn, but he was
He
the
was
guy that was really into.
Yeah.
He introduced everybody to ESPN
Ocho,
8,
yeah.
the Ocho. Obscure sports
He's been in
quarterly.
a lot of stuff, and it was like as soon as he walked on screen, I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. I love that they're bringing like cool people in to do these little cameo roles and stuff. But so anyway, he works in the workers district. He runs a shop selling water, and he has been dealing with these hooligans who have been stealing from him. And you know, he's offended on Boba Fett's behalf. And wants to know what Boba Fett's going to do about it. So Fett wanders down there, and that's where we get the mod gang. So far, so good, right? Everybody's on board up to this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is where the controversy begins. Before we even start, the mod gang. So first of all, it's kind of a throwback to American Graffiti. And this is straight from Robert Rodriguez, okay? Kind of the... people hanging out, working on the cars and stuff like that. George Lucas's, one of his first big projects. The other thing it's a throwback to is there was a counterculture movement in the 1960s, apparently over in Britain. And it wasn't like the hippies, but there was kind of similarities in kind of them wanting to not fit in as kind of the point and kind of finding their own identity at the time. They considered themselves modernists, which is where the mod abbreviation came from. Focused primarily on interests in jazz music, rock music, and interestingly enough, for some reason, scooters, which they would modify with all kinds of different chrome plating and like 60 different side mirrors attached to it and like gaudy colors and all of this stuff. So that was the intention of the mod gang in Boba Fett, that these were kind of the rebels, the counterculture to what was going on in Mos Espa.
They actually remind me of the gang in Back to the Future 2. Because they also
Yes.
had like,
Interesting.
these tech enhancements and
Yeah.
they're hoverboards. But
Wow.
that was actually the first thing that popped into my head.
Okay. I haven't
Yeah.
seen Back to the Future 2 in so long that
It's okay.
I didn't even think about
You're,
that.
you're fine.
I should check it out.
You're fine.
again.
You're
And,
good.
and I get the fact that they're not supposed to fit in. That was the whole point of them. But it just didn't work for me.
Okay,
I mean,
so it bothered you.
didn't,
You're on the side of didn't really like it.
I mean, it didn't make me say, "Oh my God, what a horrible episode." But
Sure.
it took me out. I'm like, "Oh, that's different."
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like it fit into Tatooine. The cultures we've seen there, and I know it's supposed to be counterculture, but it just was not.
So I have a question for you. Was it
Didn't set with.
was
well
it
with
the
me.
characters? Was it the bikes? Or was it both?
It was the bikes.
Okay.
It was the bikes. Yeah, it was
Hearing that a lot.
purely the color of the bike, the newness, the way it fly. It just didn't work for me. It didn't fit in with the aesthetic of what we're used to seeing on Tatooine.
But again, that was the intent.
and I get that, but
But it was too far.
Not fitting in, just it didn't work for me personally.
Okay.
It's not you, it's me. I say that a lot, Michelle.
I hear that a lot. For me, it worked. I kind of liked the vibrant colors. I thought that it was a good contrast for what was going on in Tatooine because everything's so drab all the time. And I can see, like, if you really wanted to stand out, that's one way you could do it. I don't know how they kept them so shiny all the time, but I really didn't mind it, and I loved the characters.
Well, they're not.
But Tom?
Yeah. Well, they're not working, so they've got plenty of time to shine the bikes up.
Yeah.
They made that clear. I connected with this on sort of a personal level because it brought me back to my days in the Army on active duty, and you'd see young soldiers come back from deployment kind of flush with cash, and these characters have enough money or had enough money to afford these cybernetic enhancements. What's the first thing that an 18 to 21-year-old who's not real smart with money is going to blow a bunch of cash
they're going to buy a shiny new car,
a bike.
Yeah, totally.
And they're not gonna buy like Grandpa's speeder like we see the Major Domo driving at the end of the episode. They're gonna drive the flashiest, most gaudy thing.
Yeah, but
it just worked for me, and I get it. Especially worked here because I like Star Wars trying new things, whether it's something that works and knocks it out of the park or doesn't. Is what's going to keep Star Wars fresh and alive. If Tatooine is always Tatooine and we can never color outside the lines and we just always see the same stuff we're used to seeing, at some point that becomes a little constraining.
Especially
I think,
often
for
as we go back to Tatooine. I mean, even just that locale is a constraint.
Yeah, I mean, fair point.
And this isn't a personal shot at. Yeah, it's not a personal shot at anybody that didn't like it. I mean, it took me another time watching it for it to really click with me. But I like Star Wars doing some weird stuff. Like I liked the 40 rear view mirrors on these bikes and stuff. I thought it was ridiculous and like exactly the kind of thing these characters would do. And finally, they have a purpose in life, which is to fight a Wookiee.
So the other thing that bothered me about this a little bit was, you talk about the young kids wanting to have something flashy and not their grandpa's speeder and so forth. These bikes look like they were like straight out of like, 1950s, Cuba, where it's like, okay, we should be a lot further advanced than this. And these things are like relics that don't fit into what they should be for the aesthetic of this gang. That's the thing that made me kind of wonder.
Retro stuff is coming back now. I mean, vinyl's coming back. There are some 50s and 60s styles that have come back.
Yeah, but these things were like little.
I know they were kind of Vespa like.
Yeah,
which is kind of intentional because the mod culture in the 60s was Vespas. So. But I get it.
And even Dan in the chat room here said that the bikes were kind of weak because they seemed to be so underpowered. And
true.
They really were. I mean, yeah, they're able to pull off some, jumps and that kind of stuff. But
they didn't have any budget for a high-speed chase scene.
And we're going to come back to the chase scene.
It really wasn't very high speed.
Right.
But in, tight city streets, they should have been able to overtake that speeder like in a block.
Yeah, well, we're going to come back to the specifics of that whole sequence because there's a lot to unpack there, I think. But okay. You're right. They're not, these are not full-on speeder bikes, right? These are not what you're going to be cruising across the Dune Sea in. Much more for city.
It's not what we would expect to be seeing on Tatooine.
Right.
It doesn't fit. And I get the throwback thing. I get the kind of like, kitschy kind of thing that they were doing, but just like it ended up being too much. And I think in execution, and this episode as a whole, really loved the story, but the execution of that particular part of it, I was really disappointed with.
Okay, so we have two who I don't really care for it at all, and two who really liked it.
I do wonder. I don't know the answer to this question, but had the visual effects stuff with that we'll inevitably talk about with the chase scene, had those not been an issue, had it been like a truly great chase scene, or If they had just leaned into it and had Boba Fett say something about it, or who like Fennec make a crack about how shiny their bikes are, and they just like acknowledge
that might have helped
that juxtaposition there.
Yeah,
I wonder whether that would have helped. I don't know. But I like that Robert Rodriguez tried and stuck his neck out for something that
I want to talk a little bit about
cool.
The characters here too. Now, again, we're going to come back to the fight scene inside the palace. We're going to come back to the chase because again, there are issues specific to those scenes that we need to discuss too. But as far as the gang itself, so we've got Drash, played by Sophie Thatcher from Yellow Jackets and a few other things that I haven't seen. She's the leader. Cybernetic left arm. She's driving the blue bike. Apparently fights with a knife. You've got Scad, played by Jordan Bolger. I don't know if he's any relative to Justin Bolger.
Not that I know.
We could ask Justin.
Maybe.
I don't know. We need to get back on the show again at some point too.
Yeah.
So Jordan Bolger from Peaky Blinders, and I hate to say it, but the Tom and Jerry movie. Moving on. He's got a cybernetic eye and a cybernetic leg. He uses a blaster. And the rest of the gang are unnamed. At least as far as IMDb and the internet knows. That maybe there are names like, behind the scenes or something. But so we have an unnamed female with green hair. Not really sure what her cybernetics are. She's the one on the green bike. And as we see in the palace fight scene, she's got a energized chain-based weapon. We've got an unnamed male, a tall blonde guy with a gray trench coat, cybernetic arm. He's riding the yellow bike. And then there were others that were seen who didn't have bikes. A lot of people, they don't catch it or rewatch, but it's not just 4 people in the gang. There are more. Like in Jabba's palace, there's another female fighting with some kind of a hammer that's got an energized tip on the end of it. And there were 2 other males there in the background when Fennec said, well, come on, let's go to work. That they all started moving and hustling away. Even though there were only 4 bikes there, I think there were like 6 or 7 people there in that gang. I liked the characters. I like the idea of cybernetics and...
Yeah, I was okay with that. I was okay with the characters. I mean, we obviously didn't get to spend that much time with them, but they brought in, at least in the brief amount of time that they were there, they brought in some usefulness to them, kind of as, well, hey, they're already there in the streets. They're kind of known. So if they're like spying for Boba Fett, then, they're not really going to stand out.
Right.
Although they kind of do, at least if they have their speeders. So I do want to put this out there, and John said I could quote him on this. He sent me this text a few days ago. We were talking about this episode of Book of Boba Fett. He's not very happy with it. And so John says, the water merchant nailed it. Nobody respects Fett because Disney's making him look like a washed up wannabe gangster now with emo bodyguards.
John. Listen,
I mean,
John, by the way, from our various Marvel podcasts.
Yes.
So Guardians of the MCU, MCU television, MCU TV. Yeah, John, we got to talk because I thought it was great. I like the idea of having those characters there. I like the fact that each one is a little bit different, unique, and has some personality, and yet they don't overtake things. They don't feel forced. Now, some scenes might have felt forced, but they as characters didn't feel forced. I'm on board. I want to see more of them. Maybe not the way we saw them in this episode, but
I mean, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would also think that, it's one of those tough things, and we don't know like kind of what financial resources Boba Fett has. Like to really pay for some serious, like intimidating muscle, to be out in the streets, or is it just kind of the, hey, he came across these kids. He knows he can get them cheap. He can pretty much manipulate and intimidate them to do what he wants them to do. They'll, serve some limited purpose, and that's about it. I don't know, but it almost kind of seems like if anyone knew that these kids were working from him, I mean, they'd kind of be chuckling. I don't know.
He's building a family.
They don't
He's
see
building a
badass
family.
enough, and
Piece
I'm
by piece.
again, and I'm fine
They held
with
up
the
okay
with
against
the individuals.
a well-known Wookiee gladiator bounty hunter that just tackled 2 Gamorreans and basically threw them, like just picked them up in the air and flew down the stairs
true.
with them, and they held up against this guy okay. I mean, they're not They're not
They ran right in.
Yeah.
Well, that whole fight scene didn't work for me either.
Yeah, we got to
really.
get to that too. That's that. There are definitely multiple things in this episode that people are discussing, but to this point, so we all agree the characters are okay. The bikes really are the problem, and even on the bikes, we're half and half, right? Okay, so everybody listening, I want you to, if you're listening to the audio
half us are
podcast,
right, half us are wrong.
right. So you guys out there, tell us which half is right, which half is wrong. Go to youtube.com/randomchatter. Throw it in the comments, even if you're listening to the audio podcast later on. Hit the subscribe and like button. You don't have to, I mean, half of us agree with whatever your opinion is. So, it seems legitimate to ask for a like, right?
Potentially, or they could come up with some really wild,
Tim.
crazy
We're trying to
kind
sell the
of
show here.
opinion that none of us are going to agree with,
Oh,
or
boy.
all of us are going to agree with, or maybe just I will agree with.
Tim is
I don't
no
know.
longer our head of marketing. All right, moving on. So Boba Fett resolves the issue with Lortha Peel. Says, the 1,300 credits you're owed. Here's 500. You can keep doing business. And by the way, cut your prices down. And then we move on. We get to the flashback. The 6.5 minute long flashback. So, payment is due. Boba Fett goes into Mos Espa. We see the stormtrooper helmets on the pikes, right? That we see in The Mandalorian.
That was
Peli Motto, yeah.
See Peli Motto.
I don't think it was Amy Sedaris herself. It was probably a body double. But we see her, the pit droids. Boba meets with the Pike representative who explains that back on their homeworld, I forget the name of the homeworld. I know Tom knows what it is. There you go.
Obadiah.
They don't like the idea of paying protection money to 2 different groups.
Tom should just turn around and point to the belt.
Right?
Whenever he has to answer a question, just point to the belt, answer the question, and that's it. That's all.
So here's the one I knew. Okay, the Kenton Striders, which is the name of this gang that they're also paying protection money to. Trivia: this is the one I know. So Kenton Strider, they come from Kenton, which is the homeworld of the Nikto. Okay. And the Kenton Strider is one of the creatures that we see on the holochess board, the Dejeric holochess in A New Hope.
Okay.
It is the one that the Mantelian Savrit picks up and body slams onto the table. Okay. I know my holochess pieces, the Mantelian Savrit. Yeah. Exactly.
It's Chewie's favorite piece.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of trivia for you. I could go down the rabbit hole further, like they heal quickly from injuries and blah, blah, blah. But anyway. So, Kenton Striders, that's the gang that Boba Fett now has to compete with. So he goes back to the village, and we have a little Owen and Beru moment. Yeah, I am a little curious where things go from here. So as much as I've not really cared that much for the flashbacks, now I'm curious. Now I'm like, okay, so the whole village just got slaughtered. How does he get from there to where we see him now?
Yeah, I've been asking that for a while, but yeah, no, but I like the balance. I like to get the current stuff and the history stuff because we need to know how he, because I thought I had that in my head, how he's going to go from where he was with the Tuskens to power. Like, okay, now he doesn't have that power base, so now what's going to happen, But also something happens to him after he takes power because now he's not as strong as he was then. So, what's that story?
We still have the whole health condition situation, which is, why he spent so much time in the Bacta tank thinking back on his previous life for the sake of us, the audience.
I mean, they got plenty of time to figure this all out for us, so...
Yeah, they got like a whole season that's super short, with short episodes.
The issue of his persistent injuries, they're making it so obvious. They've got to answer it. They've got to answer it. I mean, when he's with the Tuskens, he is, obviously impacted by his time in the Sarlacc, but he's a fighter. He's not. There's no debilitation or anything like that. He's not needing any kind of healing or anything. Now, like, the dude can't get through a day without taking a dip. So, something happened, and they gotta cover it.
Yeah, I think,
and it's not physically apparent.
I think someone else who's getting a little frustrated with the whole Bacta thing is Chrysanthemum. So,
yeah,
he's like,
he
okay,
just interrupts
I'm done with the flashbacks. Get out here. So, yanks Boba out of the Bacta tank, and Boba Fett can't get to his Mando gear, so he grabs his gaffy stick. Fight does not go well. Now, Lou.
Yeah.
I think it was you that pointed out, there's got to be some blood here, right?
No, I think it was Tim.
Was it Tim?
I think Tim did that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I want blood.
So I have a response. So first of all, you're not going to get blood in a family-friendly Star Wars series on Disney+.
Yeah.
So there's that. So how do we explain this in canon, in world? So here's my attempt, okay? Guy's covered in Bacta. Covered in it. As effective as Bacta is supposed to be, it's possible that it's automatically clotting up those cuts as they're made.
I mean, not a bad thought, and it's a stretch. It's a stretch.
I do what I can.
But it's not, I mean, he had the spiked knuckles and beat him in the face with it. Like, I'm sorry, but there's going to be some stuff.
Broken bones. I mean, we did hear ribs cracking.
Yeah.
He did pulled the E Honda move out of Street Fighter
from Chrysanthemum
Air hug.
there, and
Chrysanthemum, black chrysanthemum.
I like the chrysanthemum. Yeah, that's from our Discord server. But yeah, we heard ribs cracking. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna be out of commission for a bit, and he's still moving around. I'm like, okay, ribs broken are very painful.
Yeah, but I mean, not moving around means you die. I'd probably try to move around too. I get what you're saying. You're not wrong.
It's just I thought for as formidable as he was, and it was great to see him fighting in a full-blown Wookiee rage, which was awesome. But he didn't. There wasn't enough damage he did, and these guys kept coming back, and I'm like, I get thrown by a Wookiee across the room, I'm probably not coming back. I'm looking for some friends somewhere else,
Yeah. If I'm now unconscious or worse, I'm fully admit running away. That's a big, scary dude.
Especially after your gaffy, he just sticks his gaffy stick in his back and he just stays there the whole fight.
Joe in the chat room just
I have
said
an itch. Can you scratch it?
Yeah, I think that's right. Arm should have come off in his fight.
Yeah,
that's what he does.
It's Star Wars.
I know.
What are you going to do?
Sure.
I get it. All the complaints are valid. I agree. But
so Dan in the chat room is also calling Chrysanthemum a chiropractor. He thinks he just
he just readjusted him.
And
he also said my Bacta theory made sense.
Yeah, okay.
Just saying. So yeah, I don't know. I get the complaints, but I kind of feel, here's my take on this. This is, to me, one of the examples of, like, if we're going to sit here and critique it, yes, that's a valid critique. It's totally valid. And we talk about it and we move on. I know you guys all like the episode. I know you guys are fans of the show. I'm fans of the show. And so we move on.
It was still a fun fight scene.
Right. And it was still a fun fight scene.
It was really dynamic. There was a lot of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just, I mean, I love that they added extra characters. It wasn't just him and Boba getting the snot kicked out of him every time.
And it made it look more like
into it. And
Chrysanthemum was a real threat. Like when you've got to bring basically 9 people in to take the guy down. And even then, all you do is trick him into a cage. I mean, that's cool. I like that. Like the guy's a real threat. But when it comes to internet trolls who are really like getting into this, I feel like there's a certain point where the nitpicking has to, like, you got to get over it. You know what? I could sit here, and I know Tom and Lou and Tim could as well. we could tear apart A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. For all you original trilogy purists out there, oh my gosh, plot holes everywhere, all kinds of problems.
Phantom Menace was near perfect, though.
But point is, the pure sanctity that is the original trilogy, especially A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, those were full of problems, and we could nitpick and tear those apart. But the reality is we love the movies anyway, and I kind of feel like if you want to say, this didn't work for me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, okay, that's valid. But to sit there and bash the show, the franchise, and just the universe in general, I mean, come on. Talk about hyperbole. It's not that bad. Yeah. Get over it.
Just don't watch it. Just if you don't like it, don't watch it. Yeah, I would have no problem if the people, and a lot of it is coming from like the monetization of rage around Star Wars, because if you put out these clickbaity videos or these rants about a popular franchise, like that's what's getting the algorithm's attention or whatever, or it generates people jumping on you and
which
simultaneously giving your platform. Yeah, and I'm guilty of doing that, like commenting.
Dude,
on,
I can
on
rant.
stuff like that.
I can throw down when it comes to rants. I mean, if we wanted to start a channel, I could get us some views if I want to go to lowest common denominator there.
10 million, yeah. If the criticism and the logic behind it was even across the board, if you were applying the same logic to this as you do to Empire Strikes Back, to Rogue One or whatever, then fine. Then I accept your consistency. We'll agree to disagree and we move on. But it's this insistence that there are these different standards for different projects, and then this need to get up in your face about it and make these larger implications, like, well, you've ruined Boba Fett, or you've trashed Star Wars, this sacred character and this sacred franchise. Like, how could you? And I understand the money motivation behind it, but it just has gotten so old.
It really is kind of exhausting. And it's funny how the monetization of hatred, like what kind of impact it's having on things in general. But anyway, so this fight scene, I mean, I agree with what you said, Tim. I thought it was fun. Does it have some problems? Yeah, the physics of it, I wouldn't get up and walk away from it. But I mean, it's Star Wars. You also have an entire, an army that runs the entire universe can hold a blaster up to a wall and pull the trigger and not hit the wall. I mean, come on. Yeah. You got to let it go at some point.
It was cool to see it was really cool to see a Wookiee in combat.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Again. Like physically, like that was one of the most, I think, other than, maybe Solo and the fight in
that was good
in the muddy pit there on Mimban.
This is better, right?
Yeah, this was like as physical as you ever see a Wookiee, and that's all real, right? Like that's a guy in a suit having to be physical like that. Like my favorite part was the tackle of the two Gamorreans, and they go crashing down the stairs.
Right. I mean,
like that alone deserves an award.
One of the things that like Eric was mentioning, I think the difference between internet trolls bashing this and picking apart things that are just utterly ridiculous to pick apart, and us looking at this as fans that loved it, that are just saying, oh, we didn't like this or this could have been better. Difference between what we say and being just negative trolls is 180 degrees. Yeah. I mean, we're not bashing it.
It's critical analysis.
We're saying, this would be something I would have done differently or would have changed, but overall, I still love the fight scene.
And again, back to your point, totally. Tom, we're consistent with how we approach things across the entire network.
Yeah.
In this regard.
And none of you, and I count the audience in this, if you didn't like it, you didn't like, that's totally fair. This isn't like gatekeeping opinions, because but I know that all of you, like everybody on this screen, is coming at this in all their opinions from a good faith place.
For real.
I would bet every dime that I have that a lot of these the folks that make the most money off of these hateful opinions, they don't believe any of that, or maybe some of it. I don't know.
Right.
But that's not what they're going to publicly say, because That's not what drives views. So it's one of those things where it's like always kind of step back and question. If you see a view that's catching fire, like,
you don't know me, man.
Like Joe said in the chat room, with the minor issues, we still want more, and that's true, and that's what it boils down to.
Right.
So
Sure.
we'll move along
Exactly.
though. All right, so yeah, we've got the fight scene there. Again, pretty good fight. The point about finally getting to see a Wookiee in like just no holds barred physical combat was amazing. So we recover from that. We have a big, huge dinner for only 2 people. I mean, he does have staff now. I don't know why they weren't eating, but whatever.
The food looked good.
It did.
I mean,
Do you see
I'd be- yeah.
Do you see the porgs roasting and the Gungan?
No.
Oh.
I like to think that they told the droids to start prepping the feast, and the droids were like, okay, we're just going to keep bringing food until you stop. And they didn't think to say that very end, like no more food.
All right. So the twins have arrived with a gift. Cause sorry about that whole trying to kill you thing. We're good, right? And the gift, this is the most wonderful gift of all. I tell you, I was really when they start, that cart starts floating up and I see the gift that the twins brought for Boba Fett, Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
How awesome, right? I mean, yeah,
that's the real
gift too, but
Danny
like
Trejo
Danny
is
Trejo.
a gift.
He is. Well, it's funny because I watched
Yes.
that on my iPad the morning of Wednesday there, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God, is that Danny
I did the
Trejo?
same thing, like,
is
that him?
That's gotta be him. It's like a tiny little thing on my screen. I'm like, it's gotta be him.
And my first thought is, why is he in the background? Make him bigger. Make him bigger. And I mean, they're going to in a minute, but it's like, no, you start with him bigger. Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
If only they made Danny Trejo as big as a Rancor.
Right.
Or if they made him the Rancor.
Yeah.
Huh?
There you go. That's not a bad idea. For those who don't know, I was surprised there were some people in our Discord server who did not know who Danny Trejo is. Danny Trejo has 419 IMDb acting credits.
Holy crap.
419. Dude has been in everything.
Prolific.
So I remember him most from Dusk Till Dawn, Machete.
Yeah.
And
He plays the same character everywhere, though.
I mean, he
he
kind of does.
It's pretty much, it's
Yeah.
it's like Ryan Reynolds and
It's
Deadpool.
great
It's like,
in,
he
was
is
it-
Machete.
Yeah.
I mean, the character
Yeah.
name in everything that he's in should simply be Danny Trejo.
So here's one of the things I like about Danny Trejo. So first of all, everybody that works with him all go on and on and on, just gush nonstop about what a sweet, generous guy he is. And
he just looks like a hardcore
he
badass.
looks
He
frightening.
does. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
talks about how he's like just one
How
of
nice
the
he is.
best human
Yep.
beings on the planet. And number 2, he grew up as a kid. He got into drugs and violence, and I think he spent like 11 years in prison, something like that. And then when he got out, he changed his life. He straightened up. Actually, I think he did it while he was in prison. And now he works with a lot of like trying to rehabilitate people who are coming out of prison, like getting their life straightened out, and
Nice.
and
That's
also
awesome.
like prison reform and stuff like that. Like he really works hard, more than I've seen pretty much any other celebrity do, at trying to get people to reconstruct their lives and to better themselves and like get back on track. And I have a lot of respect for people who do that. So, and that's one of the things I like about him, not so much just his acting stuff, but who he is as a person. So anyway, so Danny Trejo, the Rancor Keeper. Of any of the scenes in the show, this was the one that felt weird to me. So this is another point of controversy in this episode. Number one, people are kind of saying they're trying to make Boba Fett too sympathetic. And I'm thinking, well, he's the main character. Of course he's supposed to be sympathetic, right? It's his show. We're supposed to connect with him. But for me, the dialogue felt really mushy.
I was fine with it.
I don't know that
It didn't
wimpy's
bother
the
me that
right
much.
word, but it was
With
just sappy, you know.
Something seemed out of place to me.
Yeah,
with
the
dialogue.
Rancor's
You're right.
depressed because they're emotionally complex creatures,
I mean,
unlike
I
internet
like-
trolls.
Yeah, I really like the description of the Rancor, and I'm like, saying that they become lovable. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's what I never thought about a Rancor,
can
but that's
become
cool. I
very
like it.
loving, unlike internet trolls. It felt weird, like I was trying to figure out, at what point is somebody going to start making out with someone or something else? Like it was so mushy.
Well, so I had two things going on in my head.
we've moved on.
Yeah, we're past the
we're
twins.
talking about
I'm sorry.
Trejo's.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will come back.
Because
I'll
there's
come
more
back
stuff
to
there
the
too.
twins. I have
We'll come back to that. But yeah, we're talking now about, we kind of got hooked on the Danny
Sorry.
Trejo thing. So now we're talking about the Rancor training. We'll come back to the twins.
The two things that had going through my head during that whole sequence with him and the Rancor and the whole thing of being imprinting and so forth was, okay, either this is an elaborate ruse and he's going to just like attack Boba.
I was wondering.
Or
Need him.
the other part of me was like, okay, Boba is just acting way too, I don't know, like a kid on Christmas morning who just
Trusting?
got the pony.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, did it feel good? I'm like,
Oh, that's
okay,
a good
it feels-
boy.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm intruding on something private here. I
Right.
shouldn't be
That's what
watching
was
this.
weird.
It was like,
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. That nails it.
I think Lou was thinking there was like an IED inside the Rancor or something.
I was wondering if this was like round two.
Well, no, what I
Stanton couldn't get him. Oh, we're sorry. Here, take
No,
the
what I-
gift, and then the gift eats him. Like I was wondering if that wasn't
Well, what I thought
another
was,
lame ploy.
I love the vague reference to the holiday special that Boba Fett made in this, saying, "I've ridden the beast 10 times this size. Of course, I want to learn how to ride a Rancor."
Okay.
Like that was
Yeah.
great. I loved it. And
Well, I
just
thought so.
a point to be made here that when I mentioned that to Lou said, "Well, I've never seen the holiday special, so I completely
Exactly.
missed that reference." Gentlemen,
now you
No,
need
no, I
to
don't.
watch. It's
I'll
official.
say this: if you ever do watch it, watch the Riff Tracks version. I think
that'll be fun.
so. For
yeah.
real, I think it's on YouTube now. Like I think you can watch it on YouTube. But for real, like if you're gonna watch the holiday special because you're curious, you might as well watch it with the Riff Tracks jokes. It makes it 300,000 times better, and it's still painful.
Okay.
That's what we should have watched back in December, Tim.
Yeah.
When I was visiting around Christmas.
I could have been I could have been down with that.
Have you
I
seen the
absolutely
Riff
could have been
Tracks?
down with that.
been a high quality hour.
I have not actually.
Oh, we should do a group viewing of that. We'll
Yeah.
set that up. We'll do a VR group viewing of that, and I'll make sure you guys are set up so that it'll work. I can make that happen. So anyway, so holiday special, yeah.
No, I appreciated that subtle reference. They didn't need to say it for people to pick up on exactly where they were going. What I thought, Danny Trejo says it imprints on the first human it sees, and I'm like, oh no, he's
Right.
already imprinted on Danny
Yeah.
Trejo. He's tricked him, and he's gonna
Yeah.
just eat
I was thinking the same
Eat
thing.
him.
Yep.
But that didn't happen. I'm telling you, that would be my exact reaction if somebody gifted me a Rancor. I'd be nerding out and like trying to. You tell me it's a gentle creature. Yeah, there he is. Tell me it's a gentle creature, and you do this and scratch it. It reminded me a lot of sort of the dynamic you see from pit bull owners, where a breed of dog that gets a terrible rap. Sometimes involved in some bad news stories that catch headlines.
Dan
but
mentioned the
from
same
folks
thing
that
in the
own
chat
it-
room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, exactly. So, but also like what we've seen of these beast keepers elsewhere in the galaxy, like think about what an emotional bond Malakili had with the Rancor in Return of the Jedi. So it's not off the reservation that somebody like this that works around beast constantly is going to have an attachment to this. And quite frankly, I think this opens up. We're going to see more Rancor, but would you rather have this just be a mindless beast that's back down in the dungeon and maybe we get to see somebody fed to him, or do you want to see this become like his gigantic fighting dog that he can ride around and has a bond with. Like, to me,
I will stand up,
Yeah.
fist pumping, cheering in my living room, watching Boba Fett riding a Rancor into the streets of Mos Espa.
And that's where
Well,
they
the
were
Rancor
going.
it is.
with all
It
of
is
the-
going to
see
happen.
your litter.
It is-
like picks up like some poor pike and rips them apart. And then eats another one. Like, this is what I want to see. It's already storyboarded in my head. Probably the rated R version, but
From the
still,
sounds of it.
it's in there.
He's just
It's in
gonna
there.
roll up to the mayor's office there on the Rancor and say, knock knock.
Right.
Here's my appointment.
I think that all of the foreshadowing of the litter jokes, I think that's exactly where they're going with it. All right, back to the twins, though. We did kind of skip over that a little bit. The twins basically threw their arms up and said, we tried. We lost. We messed up. Sorry. You know what? Keep Chrysantin. That's our tribute to you. We're going to GTFO. We think you should probably leave Tatooine, too. See ya. Have a nice life.
Tatooine actually
Tatooine,
sucks.
there's sand everywhere. It gets in everything.
Something bad is going to happen.
So why did the Hutts decide to get out? Now, of course, we know the Pikes are doing something, as we see later at the end of the episode. But I wouldn't think the Pikes are so big that the Hutts would be intimidated by that.
No, that's a distraction.
Else.
That gang. Don't forget that gang is paying protection to either Tusken Raiders or to. To
local
a
indigenous
Platoonian
tribes
gang.
or
no,
some bikers.
Yeah. No syndicate that's having to pay that has that tenuous a grasp. They also don't own. They're not running any sector of Mos Espa. They don't even have that much of a foothold there.
They have a building.
So
Boba Fett can just walk into.
Yeah, they have a little hut. They have a little hut, couple guys outside, and a train. That's it. So it's not the Pikes. That's a total misdirection. You think about the Hutts, how powerful they are, the kind of stature that they have in the galaxy, and what Jabba's fiefdom meant to the Hutt family. I mean, this is a major spice smuggling route that Jabba's territory sits on. It's not just like a palace in the desert. This is like high dollar stuff. So it's not the Pikes that this was promised to. This is somebody else.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some bigger players at play here.
Begins with a Q and ends with era. I don't know.
I wouldn't complain. We'll see. Either that or Black Sun. I prefer Kira, but all right. So unfortunately,
you could do it. Prince Shizor.
I take either one.
Yeah.
The riding lessons. We begin today. Right after he does all of these other things that are going to take up his entire day, like going to the mayor's office yet again. And, except the mayor's schedule is complicated a bit, as I recall. So, the chase.
I think we pretty much already talked about
I don't know. So everybody's like, oh, the special effects were horrible. I think the two things that I caught with the special effects, because I paid really close attention to it on a rewatch. Tom, I think before we started recording, you were talking about compositing issues. Green screen, chroma key. Mm-hmm. There were two moments in particular where you could just tell that it was green screened and not well. And then the other thing was it almost felt like a frame rate issue. Like it was like instead of 30 frames a second, we're watching it at like 25 through certain scenes. It felt visually kind of stuttery anytime there was a lot of visual movement on the screen. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know it wasn't a streaming thing for me. It was twice. I downloaded a local copy. I'm watching it on a 4K TV. I watched it on multiple different devices. It wasn't a hardware issue.
It was how it was filmed.
It was how it, well, yeah, edited and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think those were really the two things that even if people couldn't put their finger on what it was, you notice. When something's 25 frames a second instead of 30 or whatever the actual issue was, you catch that. And then green screen, like these days, it's so easy to tell if you don't do it well. And they didn't do it well in part of this scene. And then the other thing too, the writing. So I get having slower bikes because they look shiny, but these guys probably can't afford good bikes, like fast bikes. And it's in a city, so you can't go that fast anyway. So I get that. But it felt kind of slow, and it was lazy writing. How many times do we have to see the pedestrian walking across the street and almost getting hit? And it's one thing in more modern chase scenes,
and the Melu Run cart getting knocked over,
right?
And, you know,
but here's the thing: it's one thing. Like more modern takes on this is you're zooming by and people are jumping out of the way. The old traditional take is you focus in on the guy crossing the street, and then you cut back to the speeder, and then you cut back to the pedestrian. Like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then you cut back to the speeder, zooming past the pedestrian. And then you go back to the recovering pedestrian, like, whoa, my gosh, that was close. Like, it's just, not only is it time consuming, it's just so overdone and has been since like the 1920s. Literally.
Like I said, it was very kitschy. There was just,
yeah.
And while I can totally respect the throwback aspect of it, there's still a better way of doing that. They could have done that much better.
Of course. I mean, of course.
They were,
two people were walking across the street of Mos Espa with a large painting. Of course. Come on. Come on.
That's out of a Mel Brooks movie.
On.
I mean,
and even Mel Brooks was parodying old 1920 slapstick stuff when Mel Brooks did it.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, like Eric said, it was lazy writing. It wasn't very imaginative. I mean, I felt like I was watching I'll date myself here, the O.J. Simpson, high-speed chase on the highway. It's
high speed.
Okay, this wasn't even thought out very well. They didn't, when they storyboarded this, did they actually get to the point where they said, yeah, this will work? I mean, it just didn't seem like they thought it through.
When it was, if you're gonna set this up so it's not, it's a high-speed chase that isn't, you don't also have to use like camera angles and these like visual tricks that make things seem like they're going faster. So that's, commonly used in film and has been for decades, like show at a low angle or this or that. And it was like, on rewatch, I was like, well, what are they trying to make this chase? Right. Again, you lean into it, and I think they attempted to do that a little bit, but they were and make it just like lean into the goofiness of the whole thing. I mean, after all, the major domo is driving the equivalent of like a station wagon through the through Mos Espa, but then they also try to make it like really action packed and use some of these visual effects, and it just. It didn't work trying to have it both ways for me, and especially the bit at the end, him crashing in the melee ruins, that was funny. This dramatic stop that the female does just looked off to me. It just pulled me.
Part of it was you could
right
tell
out of the
that
moment.
The footage was sped up because the human movements were way too fast, and then it slowed down to normal speed. So again, special effects. Issue. They could have had her turning and just like zoom the camera in really fast, and it would have had the same visual effect instead of speeding the film up. And that was a mistake. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. What made this even worse was that, last episode, the train sequence was fantastic. And it's like, were those guys busy when they did this episode? I mean, did they find another team that was like, okay, you guys
different director.
I mean, yeah, it was the same production house.
Well, and this is Robert Rodriguez, who I would have expected a little better from.
Yeah.
It almost, I have not watched. So Rodriguez did a series of kind of kids
Spy
films. What is it? Spy Kids. Yeah, it felt like something you would have seen out of Spy Kids. And I wondered whether he was intentionally trying to get that sort of effect throughout the whole scene.
Maybe. But, I mean, I get maybe trying to go for some slapsticky humor with it. But again, it's been so done. And it was so, there were 3 different scenes where they cut to the person crossing the street. They cut back to the person who's going to hit them. They cut back to the people crossing the street panicking. They cut back to the almost collision. And then they cut back to the recovery. and then they did a B version of it, and then a C version of it, and they just kept going. And then again, the painting, like it was just so cookie cutter. I don't know.
Right.
But listen, there were some good things. I liked that we got to see kind of the cybernetics of the gang members had a purpose. That was kind of cool.
Even though the one in the foot was weird.
Well, his entire leg is cybernetic. So basically, a little spike comes out and then he pistons it into the... Like, first time it was kind of weird. Second time I'm like, okay, that's not as bad as I remember it being. That was all right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was rough though. And that's it. I mean, that's basically the episode. We go back to the palace. He contacts what's his face over the radio. Scad over the radio. They see the Pikes coming in on the Star Cruiser. Fennec says, "Looks like they're going to war." Fett says, "We'll be ready." And then we wait a week.
I mean, the number that came off the cruiser didn't really look like a war party. It looked like a meeting.
Like it doesn't.
Like
that's a squad.
She didn't say they sent in their troops. She said they're going to war. Like it's war in like a metaphysical sense.
Yeah. No, it was war like a Godfather kind of sense. Yeah.
They're also traveling. They don't even the Pikes don't even have like their own transport. They're coming off like in coach.
Yeah, they're in a public transport.
They got a VIP section or something.
Hang on, guys. We gotta go to baggage claim here.
they went to the Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel in Orlando. And, they got to push the little hyperspace lever because it's exciting.
That's nice. Yeah, the Pikes are a total misdirection to kind of hide a reveal. I think is coming in episode 6 or 7. So.
Although I say I really want to make a Pike face mask.
Yeah, I think that could be cool cosplay. Plus, you got the flowy robes and everything, so it's not going to be too hot.
Yeah.
The helmet mask or the alien mask, Lou?
Helmet mask.
The helmet mask.
That's the correct answer.
I'm not going to wear any kind of
latex,
rubber latex.
I think you should do both. That way you can do surprise.
I think you should do a giant Wookiee
double cuts.
Lisa back.
Even more of a surprise is if it's a Gungan mask underneath.
Or Tim, do a giant Wookiee wearing mudtrooper armor, because that would be very comfortable.
There you go.
Imagine.
The mud Wookiee.
That's actually a great way to lose like 40 pounds.
I was going to say, who needs a sauna?
You'll sweat that out in like an hour.
I mean, get an IV drip, or else you'll be dehydrated. But otherwise, all right. Any last thoughts on this episode? I liked it. I thought, there were some problems. There's problems with a lot of stuff in Star Wars, and yet I still like Star Wars. What are you going to do? There was enough good in this episode to counteract the bad stuff. Easily, in my opinion. Thoughts?
I think it needed more Minbin, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, I liked it. I had fun watching it. I thought the bikes didn't work for me, both visually and in the chase. His speeder worked in the chase scene, but the bikes didn't. So the bikes for me were what pulled me out of this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah. No, I liked it between Kersant and that fight scene, and I really, really liked the scene with the twins and sort of the threads that laid out there. I enjoyed this a lot.
All right.
There was, I think, one of the great things about this episode, and the episode itself was not bad. Mm-hmm. It had good things to it. It had good aspects to it. It was a great continuing build on the story.
Yes.
And it set up a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was a great thing. We got some good elements in this episode, but it also, like, you're ready to turn the page. Mm-hmm. You're like super excited about it. So, hey, Wednesday morning, we're going to be there.
And that's the thing. Like, I think back to some episodes of The Mandalorian, like the one where he was transporting that frog lady and they landed on the planet with the spiders and stuff. I mean, that was a good action scene at the end, but it did nothing for the story. Basically, it was a side show. It was a bottle episode almost. And The Mandalorian had a few episodes that were like that to me. This, as you said, Tim, it furthered the story. There was good world building here, and I liked that.
But there were also things in Dave Filoni style, like those episodes in The Mandalorian, where elements of those episodes were then referred to in future episodes, like fairly critically in a lot of cases too. I mean, that's a very big Dave Filoni thing.
I get it.
And we saw a lot of that in the Clone Wars and such, where people would say, oh, this was a, throwaway episode or whatever derogatory term they decide to use. And okay, fine. Maybe a little bit more mundane. Maybe it doesn't seem to build on the story. But then like a season later, all of a sudden, everything that happened in that episode was like super important. And that's how Dave writes.
Again, I think there were other ways to, I mean, we could argue this back and forth. I think the Frog Lady episode, there's still other ways that could have been handled, and still have gotten the quote, important story elements later on. But, it doesn't matter. As far as a standalone episode, I feel like The Mandalorian had several where I felt like, I know this is going to pay off later, but for right now, this is like, ugh. And this episode had meat in it. It had story content. It had character content. It had world building.
It had Danny
Trejo. It had a Rancor.
Yeah.
It had
what more can you ask for?
A Wookiee gladiator bounty hunter versus like 9 humans and 2 Gamorreans. Like it had a lot of stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm looking at. And I'm happy with the good stuff in this. Was there some stuff that was lackluster? Yeah. But the good stuff was good. So I'm happy. But yes.
There was one more thing I'll say I was unhappy with. Just the length. I wish it was longer.
I wish all of them were longer.
Yeah.
There's the first thing I saw when I first queued up to play. I'm like, oh, it's only 38 minutes long. That's included the credits and a recap. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be that way with this entire season. But I've said that before. But that's going to do it for this episode. We want to know what you out there think. So leave comments below. Even if you're watching live in the chat room, you want to throw some comments in for people to check out later, that would be great. Hit the subscribe and like button. If you're listening to the audio podcast, go over to YouTube. Go to youtube.com/randomchatter or randomchatter.com/YouTube. Subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification button if you want. Post in the comments below. What did you like? What did you dislike? And what did the bad outweigh the good, or did the good outweigh the bad? What did you think? But that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back next Sunday night to cover whatever Chapter 4 is and whatever happens in Chapter 4. I can't wait. I really feel like things are starting to ramp up now. So, right?
Rancor training.
Rancor riding. And we're going to get the montage. Luke,
that's
can't
just
wait
the
for
episode
montage.
title.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic.
Oh, yeah, another
give me
montage.
a Rocky-style montage. Oh, I am down with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. If you're,
and then the final thing actually should be to, Eye of the Rancor.
yeah, we could. I don't know if we know somebody in the music, we could do a little parody of that probably. But yeah, next Sunday night we will be back. In the meantime, for those in the chat room, we will be back in a few minutes with Random Chatter. We're going to do our weekly review show, and I think we're going to do another top 5 episode. So if you're listening live, stick around for that. Otherwise, we will see you again next week. Be sure to hit the website randomchatter.com. Go to randomchatter.com/Discord to join the Discord server, and that's it. We'll see you again in a week. Take care.